This video from the Doing Your Dissertation series considers how to write an effective title for your research. We'll consider the different ways of expressing and structuring dissertation titles, including questions, topics, what was done, and two-part titles. Once you have your research question, you can think about what the overall title might be for your dissertation. It's perfectly feasible to leave your title until much later, perhaps even the end of the writing up process, because by then you'll have a fuller picture of your overall conclusions, and this can be helpful for checking that your title adequately summarises the content and focus of the research. However, getting a preliminary title in place can feel like a positive step, so whether you start drafting your title now or leave it until later, here's some advice on how to draft an effective title. Remember that your eventual title for your research project may not necessarily be the same as your research question, although this is a common way of structuring the title of a dissertation, and probably the simplest, especially at the early stages. So, for example, initially at least, you might have a working title of "How does digital activism shape women's emotions and actions towards social issues?" or "What factors determine customer loyalty to internet service providers in Thailand?" Others prefer to structure their titles more along the lines of the topic, for example, "The Ritual Trivialization of Environmental Prosecutions," or "Diet in London from the Dark Ages to the Medieval State," or what the research did, such as comparison, evaluation, critical analysis, mapping, or theorizing. However, a particularly common way of constructing titles is the two-part approach, in which some aspect of the research is presented on the left, followed by a colon which introduces some additional aspect of the research on the right. What the elements are in each of the parts can vary widely, but at least one usually focuses on the topic. So we can see here in example 1, the first half of the title is a phrase which summarises the topic, and the second indicates what the research did, a particular analytical approach. And in the second example, the topic comes first, followed by the research question. The third example alludes to both the topic and what the research aimed to do, followed by the research question, whilst the fourth example introduces the wider topic first and then provides the much more specific topic of the current research after the colon. Finally, it's also common for an apt quotation or well-known phrase which encapsulates your research or conclusions to be included in these types of two-part titles. So in example 5, we see the phrase "popping the lid on acyl nitrates," which plays on poppers being the common name of the recreational drug being investigated. And in the final example, we see the well-known phrase "get off my cloud" from the classic Rolling Stones hit, repurposed in the title of research into cyber warfare, international humanitarian law, and the protection of civilians. So play around with the different elements and come up with different possibilities so that you can get feedback from your supervisor on some different options. As long as your title includes your research question, topic or focus, you're free to use other elements such as catchy phrases that encapsulate your findings or conclusion, or phrases that communicate what the research did. Try answering these questions to get some ideas. What is your topic? What's your specific focus? What are you doing? What is your research question? And what is your conclusion? It's also worthwhile considering what the most common types and forms of titles are in your discipline, as this can certainly vary. For example, the two-part title tends to be much less common in STEM subjects, where statements of results or presenting the topics in phrase form are much more common, such as "the Hannah's hand prosthesis replicates the key biological properties of the human hand," "microbial DNA profiling as a tool in forensic science," "the effects of cycling posture on lower limb muscle activation," or "non-uniformities in the RC4 stream cipher." So when you're at the stage of drafting your title, consider reviewing the titles of articles in major academic journals in your subject to get a better idea of what types of titles are most common. In summary, remember that titles are usually different from your research question. Though some simply use their research question as the title, many prefer a different structure, particularly the two-part title which combines the topic with a pithy quotation or phrase, the focus of research, what the research did, or what the conclusions were. but conventions can differ according to subject, so take your cue from research articles in your subject area. And finally, remember that drafting your title can wait until you're nearing completion if you prefer.